The small stranger. The stars stretched across the black sky like shining diamonds. A small transport ship drifted quietly through space, carrying traders, workers, and one mysterious passenger. She was unlike the others, petite and delicate. Her frame no taller than 4 feet. Her skin held a soft glow, almost silver under the ship's lights, and her wide eyes carried both wonder and fear. She was an alien girl from a distant world, and she looked far too fragile for the harshness of the galaxy. When the ship landed on the human colony world of Relora, crowds gathered at the docking bay. Humans of every size and strength walked with confidence. Towering over her tiny figure, she stepped down from the ramp slowly, clutching a small bag to her chest. People whispered, pointing at her, their voices carrying curiosity and doubt. "She is so small," one said. "How could someone like that survive out here?" Another added, but she ignored them, her soft footsteps barely making a sound on the metal floor. Her name was Lyra, though few knew it. To most, she was simply the small stranger. Lyra had not come for trade or politics, but for something deeper, something she had not yet dared to speak aloud. She carried a secret hope inside her heart, and that hope drew her into the world of humans. At first, life in the colony was difficult. Shops and inns looked down on her, treating her like a child instead of a traveler. Some laughed when she tried to carry supplies, for the bags were almost bigger than her body. Even among aliens of other species, she seemed weaker, less capable. Her people had always been careful to stay away from humans, claiming they were reckless and wild. But Lyra had wanted to see for herself, and now, surrounded by taller figures and louder voices, she wondered if she had made a mistake one evening. As she tried to move a heavy crate near the marketplace, a group of human workers stood watching. They whispered and chuckled, not coolly, but with disbelief. "She'll never lift that," one said. Another added, "Too tiny, too fragile. She should not even be here." Their words cut her more than she wanted to admit. Her arms trembled as she tried once more, determined to prove them wrong. But the crate did not move. Tears of frustration filled her eyes, though she tried to hide them. Then a voice spoke from behind, calm but strong. "Need some help?" She turned and saw a young human soldier, tall and broad-shouldered, with kind eyes. He stepped forward and lifted the crate as if it were nothing. The crowd laughed softly, but he did not mock her. Instead, he smiled and said, "You should not hurt yourself with work like this. It is not about size, it is about knowing when to ask." His words were simple, but they carried warmth. For the first time since her arrival, Lyra felt seen, not as a fragile alien, but as someone who mattered. From that day, their paths crossed more often. The soldier's name was Daniel, and unlike the others, he never treated her as weak when others whispered about her size. He shrugged it off. When she hesitated in crowded places, he walked beside her, shielding her from the pushing crowds. Slowly, she began to feel safe. Her small frame no longer felt like a curse, at least when he was near. Still, doubts filled her heart. She had grown up hearing her elders say that her kind and humans could never share real bonds. They were too different, too distant, too incompatible. And yet, each time Daniel spoke to her, each time his eyes met hers with respect, she felt something awaken inside her, something her people had never warned her about, something stronger than fear. One night, as the colony lights glowed in the distance, Lyra sat on a bench watching the stars. Daniel joined her quietly, sitting down without a word. After a long silence, he said, "You remind me of the stars, small but brighter than anyone realizes." She turned to him, shocked by the honesty in his voice. Her heart raced, and she looked away quickly. Not knowing what to say, no one had ever spoken to her like that before. No one had looked at her and seen more than her size. But in that moment, sitting beside him under the endless sky, Lyra realized something. Perhaps she had not traveled across the stars for trade or adventure. Perhaps she had come searching for this, a bond she did not yet understand, a fragile thread connecting two worlds that had always stayed apart. And as the night deepened, She felt a spark of hope, a dangerous hope, but one she could not let go of, for she was the small stranger. But maybe, just maybe, her story was only beginning. *A forbidden's friendship. The days in the colony passed quickly, but for Lyra they felt heavy with whispers everywhere she went. Eyes followed her, measuring her size, judging her worth. Some called her fragile, others called her a child, and many wondered why she had come at all. But Daniel stood beside her, like a quiet shield against their words. And though she tried to hide her heart, she could feel it pulling closer to him with every passing day. They would meet in the crowded marketplace, where his tall frame towered above the merchants. Daniel would carry supplies with ease, while she struggled with even the smallest bundle. Yet he never laughed. He only smiled and said, "You are strong in ways that others cannot see." His kindness wrapped around her like warmth in the coldness of space. It was a dangerous comfort, one she knew her people would never allow. For among her kind, humans were spoken of with fear and disdain. "They are reckless," her elders had said. "They love without thought. They destroy as easily as they protect." And the greatest rule of all was clear: no bond between her kind and theirs should ever exist. Yet here she was, her heart stirring each time Daniel walked beside her, her thoughts betraying everything she had been taught. One evening, the two of them wandered to the edge of the colony, where the lights faded into open fields. The stars stretched wide above them, and the ground hummed with the quiet of distant machinery. Daniel walked slowly, as though he wanted the night to last longer. "You know," he said, glancing down at her, "you carry yourself with more courage than most soldiers I have met." Lyra lowered her gaze, unsure if his words were simple kindness or something more. "I only walk," she whispered. "There is no courage in that." But he shook his head and said, "You walk in a world that doubts you, and still you move forward. That is courage." Her chest tightened, and she quickly looked away. No one had ever spoken to her like that before, not even among her own people. The warmth of his words clashed with the warnings of her elders. She felt torn, like a fragile thread stretched too far. If she let herself fall into this closeness, what would happen? The colony itself seemed to notice their growing bond. Children pointed and laughed, calling her Daniel's pet. Merchants shook their heads, whispering that it was unnatural, and even the officials began to cast suspicious eyes in their direction. Yet Daniel did not flinch when one man spat cruel words at her. Daniel stood tall and said, "If you cannot respect her, then you cannot speak to me." The man walked away, muttering, but Lyra could see the fire in Daniel's eyes. He was not protecting her out of pity, but out of something stronger, something real. Still, fear gnawed at her heart. If her people discovered what was happening, the consequences would be severe. Her kind had strict laws, and breaking them meant exile. She could lose everything she had ever known, and yet, when Daniel's hand brushed against hers as they walked, she did not pull away. She let the touch linger, soft and dangerous, a choice she could not undo. That night, she lay awake in her small rented room, staring at the dim ceiling light. Her thoughts raced, filled with images of Daniel's smile, his words, his presence. But behind those memories came the voices of her elders, sharp and cold. "You are too small for them, too fragile. Their love will crush you. Their world will break you." She clenched her fists, trembling with confusion. Why did her heart not listen to reason? Why did it beat faster whenever she remembered him? The next day, she avoided him, hoping the feeling would fade. She walked alone through the crowded streets, forcing herself not to glance at the places where he might be. But her steps felt heavier without him near, and the silence of the colony pressed down like a weight. She realized then that distance did not protect her, it only hurt more. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, she found herself walking toward the training grounds where he worked. Daniel was there, sparring with other soldiers, his movements sharp and strong. When he noticed her, he paused, a small smile touching his lips despite the sweat on his brow. "You came back," he said simply. and those words alone sent warmth flooding through her. She nodded, unable to speak, for though she feared the bond growing between them, she could not stay away. And so the Forbidden's friendship began. Two souls walking together against the rules of their worlds. Two hearts drawn closer despite the whispers around them. Each step they took together deepened the danger, but also deepened the feeling neither of them dared to name. Under the starlit sky, Lyra felt the first spark of something terrifying. Something her people had always warned her about. Something she could not stop even if she tried. And as Daniel's voice echoed softly beside her, she wondered how long they could walk this path before the universe itself noticed. Secrets of her species. The nights on Relora Colony grew colder, and Lyra often found herself staring at the stars. She had spent many weeks with Daniel now, learning about humans, their courage, and their laughter. Every moment she shared with him only deepened the strange warmth inside her chest. But along with that warmth came a heavy fear. A fear tied to the history of her people. Her species, the Arevans, were known across the galaxy for their frailty. They were small, light-boned, and rarely ventured beyond their homeworld for centuries. The Arevans had kept themselves apart, never mixing with other species, especially humans, whom they considered reckless and dangerous. The elders had taught her that her kind's biology was too fragile, too incompatible, that no bond, physical or emotional, could ever form between an Arevan and a human. But Lyra had begun to doubt those old warnings. One morning, a message arrived from her people. It came on a thin, hollow disc, glowing pale blue in her small hands. When she activated it, the voice of Elder Sira filled the room, firm and cold. Lyra, you must remember who you are. You were not born to walk among humans. You are too small, too different, too weak for their world. The Elder's eyes narrowed through the hologram. We know of your closeness to the human soldier. Break this bond before it destroys you both. Return home while you still can. The message ended, leaving the air heavy and silent. Lyra's chest tightened. She wanted to scream, but no sound came. Her people had always told her what she could not do, what she must not become, and yet here she was, feeling more alive with Daniel than she had ever felt on her homeworld. But what if the elders were right? What if she was too small, too fragile, and this bond could only end in pain? That evening, Daniel noticed her silence. He found her sitting by the riverbank near the colony, her feet barely touching the water. Something's wrong, he said. Sitting beside her, his voice gentle, she tried to speak but her throat tightened. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. At last she whispered, "My people say it is impossible. They say I cannot belong here, not with you." Daniel frowned, his gaze hardening. Impossible? That's their word, not mine. He leaned closer, his voice steady. Do you feel like you don't belong when you're with me? She shook her head slowly, whispering, "No, with you. I feel strong." He smiled softly. Then that's all that matters. But the fear did not fade. That night she dreamt of her homeworld, the silver forests and glowing lakes. She saw the elders standing tall, their eyes filled with judgment. She saw herself, small and trembling, trying to defend her choice, and in the shadows she heard whispers, too fragile, too weak, too small. She woke with a cry, her hands shaking. The fear clung to her like a shadow. The next day, she wandered the colony, hoping to distract her mind. She passed by a group of alien traders who had just arrived. Among them was an older Arevan, his gaze sharp as it landed on her. He stepped forward, blocking her path. "You should not be here," he hissed in their native tongue. "Your kind does not belong with humans. You shame us all." Lyra froze, her chest burning with anger and pain. But before she could respond, Daniel appeared, stepping between them. His tall figure shielded her completely. "She belongs wherever she chooses," Daniel said firmly, his eyes locked on the elder Arevan. The elder's face twisted with disgust, but he turned and walked away. Lyra's heart pounded. For the first time, someone had defended her against her own people. Later, when they were alone, she looked up at Daniel. her voice trembling. "Why? Do you protect me?" "Everyone says I am too small, too weak," Daniel smiled faintly. "Because you are braver than any of them, and size has nothing to do with courage." His words struck her heart like fire. Perhaps her people's warnings were wrong. Perhaps the strength they denied her had always been there. Waiting to be found, she touched her chest gently, feeling her heartbeat. For the first time, she wondered if her bond with Daniel was not just friendship, but something far more dangerous and far more powerful. That night, she stood before the mirror in her small quarters. She studied her reflection, tiny frame, delicate features, wide eyes filled with uncertainty. Her people had told her she was too small for love, too fragile for bonds. But when she thought of Daniel's smile, when she remembered his hand reaching for hers, she felt stronger than she ever had. A spark of defiance grew inside her. If her people believed it was impossible, then she would prove them wrong. For she was Lyra, the small stranger, and her story was not finished. It was only beginning. The bond grows. The colony streets buzzed with life as traders shouted. Machines hummed, and lights flickered against the night sky. Lyra walked through the crowded market with Daniel at her side, her small frame hidden by the shadows of taller humans. Everywhere she went, whispers followed, some curious, some cruel. "She is too small. Look at her," one merchant muttered. "How can a human walk with such a fragile creature?" Another scoffed. The words stung. But Daniel's steady presence gave her courage. Days passed, and Lyra found herself drawn closer to him, not just for protection, but for something deeper. She noticed the way he laughed, loud and full, unlike the quiet tones of her people. She noticed how his hands, so large compared to hers, could lift heavy machines yet handle delicate tools with care. And she noticed how his eyes softened when they rested on her, as though he saw something no one else did. Her heart raced in ways she had never felt before. But with that warmth came fear that her small size made her unworthy, fear that her people's warnings would come true. One evening, they sat near the colony's watchtower, staring at the stars. The sky was wide and endless, filled with shimmering lights. Daniel leaned back on the metal railing, his voice calm. "You know, the galaxy is full of giants and monsters, but you carry a strength they cannot see." Lyra shook her head, her voice breaking. "I am too small, Daniel. Everyone says it, even my own people." He turned to her, his eyes fierce. "Then let them talk. I don't care what they see. I care about what I see." She swallowed hard, her chest burning, her small hands trembling as if her body could not contain the storm within. From that night, their bond deepened. Daniel taught her how to move through human spaces with confidence. He guided her at the training fields, where soldiers laughed at first but soon grew silent as they watched her persistence. She could not match their strength, but she learned speed, cleverness, and balance. Daniel clapped proudly when she scaled a wall half her size, his cheer louder than the others' silence. For the first time, she began to believe that maybe size was not a cage but a challenge. Still, shadows lingered. Not all humans welcomed her presence. One evening in the marketplace, a group of workers cornered her, their faces twisted with disdain. "You don't belong here," one hissed. "You're too weak, too fragile, a burden to him and to all of us." Lyra froze, her heart pounding. Before she could respond, Daniel appeared, his tall frame stepping between her and the men. "Say one more word," he growled, his voice sharp as steel. The men backed away quickly, muttering curses. Lyra stared at Daniel in shock. Never before had anyone defended her with such fire. Her small chest heaved with breath, and she realized the truth. She was no longer alone, but with closeness came risk. Whispers spread faster through the colony, rumors of a human soldier walking too closely with an alien stranger. Some said it was dangerous, others said it was unnatural. Even the council took notice, warning Daniel quietly to keep his distance. Yet the warnings only pushed them closer. Every glance, every word, every quiet moment shared in the starlight pulled them deeper into something they could not deny. One night, A storm raged across Relora, lightning splitting the skies. Daniel found Lyra outside, standing in the rain, her small form shaking. "What are you doing?" He shouted over the thunder. "I need to feel it," she cried back, her voice breaking. "I need to feel that I am alive, that I am not just small, not just weak." Daniel's heart twisted. He ran forward and wrapped his arms around her, shielding her from the storm. "Lyra," he whispered fiercely, "you are more alive than anyone I know. Don't ever doubt that." She pressed her face into his chest, her body trembling, but inside something changed. The bond between them had grown into something undeniable. When the storm cleared, they remained together under the quiet sky. The colony slept. But the night carried a silence heavy with meaning. Daniel looked down at her, his hand brushing against hers, and though no words were spoken, both knew a line had been crossed. What began as protection had turned into something more dangerous, something more beautiful. Their hearts beat in unison, fragile yet strong, and as the stars burned above them, Lyra felt it clearly. Her story was no longer just her own. It was theirs, a bond that would defy the whispers, the warnings, and the walls between two worlds. The first signs weeks passed after the storm, and life in the colony returned to its rhythm. Lyra tried to convince herself that everything was normal, that her world had not changed. But deep inside, something felt different, something she could not explain. At first, it was small things. She woke in the mornings more tired than before, even after long hours of rest. Food that once tasted sweet now felt strange, and the smell of certain meals made her dizzy. Her small hands sometimes shook without reason, and her heartbeat raced at odd moments. She told herself it was nothing, just stress, just whispers of her people's warnings echoing in her mind. But doubt grew like a shadow she could not escape. One evening, as she walked through the colony garden, she stumbled suddenly. Daniel caught her before she could fall. Concern sharpened his eyes. "You're shaking again," he said, his voice firm. "Lyra, what's happening to you?" She tried to smile, tried to brush it away. "I'm fine, it is nothing really." But he didn't believe her, and deep down, neither did she. That night, Lyra sat alone in her quarters, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her face looked the same, her small frame unchanged, yet her body felt unfamiliar. She placed her hands gently against her stomach, her breath catching. A wild, impossible thought crept into her mind, a thought her people would call forbiddance. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "It cannot be." But the idea refused to leave. Days turned into restless nights, and the changes only grew stronger. Her senses sharpened, her emotions swung like tides. Sometimes she would laugh at nothing, then moments later tears would fill her eyes. Daniel noticed every shift, though she tried to hide it. He watched her closely, worry written across his face. At last, he cornered her in the training yard, his voice low but unyielding. "Lyra, you're keeping something from me. Tell me the truth." Her chest tightened, her throat dry. She wanted to deny it, to push the fear away. But when she looked into his eyes, steady and full of care, the words broke free. I think something is growing inside me," she whispered. Daniel froze, the weight of her words striking him harder than any weapon. "What do you mean?" he asked softly, almost afraid of the answer. Lyra trembled, her silver eyes wide. "Feel it. My body is changing, Daniel. I think I carry life." Silence stretched between them, heavy and unreal. The world around them seemed to fade, the colony noise, the wind, even time itself. Daniel's breath caught, his heart racing. "Are you saying?" Lyra nodded slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I think I am pregnant." The words hung in the air like thunder. For a long moment, neither spoke, both trapped between disbelief and fear. It was impossible. Her people had sworn it could never happen. Arrivans and humans were too different, too distant, too incompatible. And yet, here she was, fragile and trembling, with a truth that defied both science and tradition. Daniel reached out, his hand covering hers, steady and warm. "If this is true," he said slowly, "then it is not a curse, Lyra. It is a miracle." But she shook her head desperately. "No, you don't understand. My people will see this as an abomination. They will come for me, for us." Her voice cracked as panic filled her chest. "The colony will fear it too. They will not let this child live." Daniel pulled her close, his voice fierce. "Then let them try. They will not take this from us. Not from you." That night, Lyra lay awake, her hands resting protectively over her stomach. A storm of emotions raged inside her: fear, wonder, sorrow, and a fragile spark of joy. She thought of her elders, their sharp words calling her too small, too weak, unworthy of love. She thought of the humans who mocked her in the streets, who said she did not belong. And yet, despite all of it, she now carried something that belonged to both worlds, a secret that could unite or destroy everything. Whispers began soon after. Some noticed her strange glow, the way her body seemed different. Others noticed Daniel's watchful eye, how he never strayed far from her side. Rumors spread like fire. "The alien girl is ill. No, she hides something. She carries a human's child." The last whisper carried the most fear, and once spoken, it could not be silenced. Lyra's heart pounded with every passing day. Her secret no longer hers alone, she felt. The colony's eyes on her wherever she went, sharp, judging, afraid. Her people's warnings echoed in her mind, louder than ever. But when Daniel's hand slipped into hers, steady and strong, she felt a fragile courage rise again. The impossible had happened, and now there was no turning back. The first signs had revealed a truth greater than fear. And though the path ahead was dark and uncertain, Lyra knew one thing: the life inside her would change everything. Conflict and fear. The secret did not remain hidden for long. Whispers turned to voices, voices turned to arguments, and soon the entire colony buzzed with one question: is it true? The small alien carries a human's child. Lyra felt their eyes on her wherever she went. In the market, mothers pulled their children away from her. In the training fields, soldiers stopped their drills to stare. Even the council chambers echoed with her name, though she had never stepped inside. She had become more than a stranger now. She had become a storm. Daniel stayed close to her, his tall frame always a shield. But even he could not silence the growing tide of fear. Humans argued among themselves, some calling the unborn child a miracle, others calling it a threat. What if it grows stronger than us? They whispered, what if it is dangerous, something unnatural? Every question cut into Lyra's heart, leaving her small frame trembling. And then came the message from her people. This time it was not just an elder's voice, but a command, sealed with the mark of the Arevan Council. Lyra, you have betrayed your kind. You carry what should never exist. Return to us at once, or face exile forever. The words burned like fire in her ears. She could almost feel the cold eyes of her people, judging, condemning. Her hands clutched her stomach protectively, as if their voices could harm the fragile life inside her. Daniel listened to the message, his jaw tight, his fists clenched. They think they can order you like a child, he muttered, his voice low with anger. Lyra shook her head, her silver eyes shining with tears. They are my people, Daniel. They will not forgive me. They may come for me, for the baby. Daniel's gaze hardened. Then let them come. They will not take you from me. But fear was not so easily silenced. That night, the colony held a gathering, the air heavy with tension. Council members stood tall, their voices echoing across the hall. This is not about love or choice, one declared. This is about survival. If such a child exists, we must know what it means. We cannot risk the safety of our world. Voices rose in agreement, fear twisting their words sharper. She is too small, too weak. She should not have carried life at all. And now she threatens us all. Lyra sat in the shadows, hearing every word, her heart breaking. The people she had hoped to live among now saw her as danger, not family. After the meeting, Daniel pulled her into a quiet alley, his voice urgent. "You cannot go back to them, and you cannot stay here without risk. We must decide, Lyra." Her small hands shook as she whispered, "Where can we go? If both humans and Arevans turn against us, we have nowhere." Daniel looked into her eyes, determination burning like fire. "Then we make our own place, even if we must fight for it." But even as he spoke, shadows moved, strangers followed. Them in the streets, muttering darkly, one night. Rocks struck the window of her quarters, shouts filling the air. "Send her back. She brings doom. End it before it grows." Daniel stood guard at the door, his weapon at his side, his voice sharp. "They will not touch you, not while I stand." Yet Lyra's heart trembled. She had never wanted to cause fear, never. Wanted to be seen as a monster. All she had wanted was to belong, to love, to live. But now she carried a life that tied two worlds together, a life neither world seemed ready to accept. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the colony towers, Lyra felt a sudden pain ripple through her, sharp, unexpected. It stole her breath and forced her to her knees. Daniel rushed to her side, panic in his eyes. "What is it? Is it the baby?" Her hands clutched her stomach, her face pale. "I don't know. I don't know," she gasped. Fear crashed over her like a wave, not for herself, but for the fragile life within. That night, as she lay resting, Daniel kept watch by her side. He looked at her small form, curled up and trembling, and swore, silently to himself, "No matter what comes, no matter who stands against us, I will protect them both." But deep inside, he knew the storm was only beginning. The humans whispered, the Arevans prepared, and shadows gathered in every corner. Conflict had come, and fear was no longer just in their hearts. It had taken shape all around them. A new beginning. The colony stood divided. Half saw Lyra as a threat. The other half saw her as a miracle. The whispers had grown into shouts, the fear into anger, and the judgment into open conflict. And through it all, the small alien girl walked quietly, carrying life within her fragile frame. Her people sent more messages, harsher each time. "Return or be cut off forever," the elders warned. "You have shamed the Aravan bloodline. You carry what should never exist." Lyra listened with tears burning in her eyes. But when she placed her hands on her stomach, she felt the gentle rhythm of life inside her. And in that moment, she knew she could never give it up. Never surrender the child that connected her heart to Daniel's. Daniel stood beside her like an unshakable wall. He had faced soldiers, storms, and battles, but nothing compared to the fire he saw in her eyes. "You are stronger than they will ever admit," he whispered, holding her small hands in his. "No one decides this future but us." The council demanded answers. They called Daniel before them, demanding he abandon her. "This child will divide us. It will bring danger," they declared. But Daniel's voice rang through the chamber like iron. "Then let it divide you, but it will not divide me from her." Gasps filled the room, and the council fell silent. Never before had a soldier defied them for the sake of a stranger. But Lyra was no longer just a stranger. She was a symbol, to some, a warning, to others, a hope. As the weeks passed, her body grew weaker, yet her spirit only burned brighter. Every step she took in the colony became a quiet act of defiance. Mothers watched her, torn between fear and wonder. Children pointed, asking, "Will the baby be small like her, or tall like him?" And though many still whispered in fear, something new began to spread: curiosity, then admiration, for in her small frame, she carried what no one believed possible. One night, as the colony lights dimmed, a crowd gathered outside her quarters. Not with stones this time, not with anger, but with torches glowing softly. An old human woman stepped forward, her voice trembling. "I once thought you were too small, too fragile," she said. "But I see now you are stronger than all of us. You carry tomorrow inside you," the crowd murmured. Heads bowing, and for the first time, Lyra felt acceptance. It was not from everyone, not yet, but it was enough to ignite hope. Her greatest trial came when the Arivans themselves arrived. A ship landed on the edge of the colony, its silver hull gleaming under the stars. Elders stepped out, tall and graceful, their glowing eyes fixed on her with cold fury. "Lyra," Elder Sira's voice rang, "come with us. Abandon this human bond, or you will never be welcomed again." The colony held its breath, every eye fixed on the small alien girl. Daniel's hand tightened around hers, his voice low. "You don't have to choose them. You already have a family here." Lyra stepped forward, her small figure trembling, but her voice steady. "For all my life, you told me I was too small for love. Too weak for bonds, too fragile for dreams," she said, her words carrying across the silent square. "But look at me now, look at what I carry. This child is not weakness, it is strength. It is proof that love can break barriers your fear could not." Her silver eyes shone with tears, her voice rising. "You may exile me, you may turn your backs forever, but I will not abandon this life. I will not abandon him." Silence followed, heavy as stone. The elders turned away, their faces cold. And without another word, they left, their ship vanishing into the stars. Lyra stood trembling, but Daniel caught her before she could fall. "You did it," he whispered, pride and love blazing in his voice. "You chose us," months later. The colony watched as Lyra gave birth. The child was small, fragile like her, yet strong like him. A tiny heartbeat that carried two worlds in its rhythm. The whispers of fear faded, replaced by awe. For in that fragile child, humans and Arivans saw not the end, but a beginning. Lyra sat in the soft glow of the infirmary lights, the baby in her arms, her small body exhausted, yet her heart fuller than it had ever been. Daniel knelt beside her, his hand brushing the baby's tiny fingers. "He's beautiful," he whispered, his voice breaking. Lyra smiled, her silver eyes glowing. "No, he is more than beautiful. He is proof that love is never too small." Outside, the colony was quiet, the stars burning bright above, and for the first time, Lyra no longer felt like the small stranger. She was a mother, a fighter, a bridge between worlds, and in her arms, she held a future that would reshape the galaxy. A petite alien girl once thought too small for love, now carried not just life, but hope. Her story was not ending, it was only the beginning.